갈게요. 됐죠?
So we could start. Thank you for your patience. And first of all, Mr. J. Rosenblatt, thank you for your patience. And for the audience, and we could start right now the BISFF Talk of 40th Busan International Short Film Festival. So, yes. 네, 안녕하세요. 비스프 토크에 참가하신 여러분들을 진심으로 환영합니다. 저는 부산국제단편영화제 예술감독 이상호입니다. 먼저 부산국제단편영화제를 지원해 주신 부산시 한국영화진흥위원회 그리고 무엇보다 영화제를 지원해 주시는 현재 행사에 참여해 주시는 관객 여러분들에게 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. Welcome to the Busan International Short Film Festival. Hello everyone. My name is Sang-won Lee. I'm artistic director of the Busan International Short Film Festival. First of all, I want to thank those who support the Busan International Short Film Festival, starting with the metropolitan city of Busan, Korean Film Council Coffee, and all of our many supporters and you, our audience, thank you for watching. 제 40회 부산국제 단편영화제는 개막 후 6일이 지났고요. 이제 딱 하루의 시간이 남았습니다. 금년 저희 영화제는 좋은 영화제를 만들기 위해 최선의 노력을 했습니다. 세계에서 온 많은 양질의 영화를 관객 여러분들, 특히 부산의 시민들에게 보여드리고자 했습니다. The 40th Busan International Film Festival has started since 6 days ago, and we have 1 day left. We've tried so hard to have a festival, good festival for this year. We wanted to show the short films of a new talent of all of the world to the loyal audience of our festival and also to citizens of Busan. 금년 저희 영화제에는 140편 이상의 양질의 영화들이 제시가 되었습니다. 특별히 주빈국 미국의 여러 영화들은 물론 3D, 실험 영화, 한국 단편 영화 그리고 부산 지역의 다큐멘터리 영화들까지 제시가 되었습니다. This year we held our festival with more than 140 films from Korea and all over the world. We have a special US as guest country, the new media program like 3D, the experimental film, a Korean short, and also a local documentary film of Busan. 여러분들에게 소개를 드릴 텐데요. 오늘 우리 행사가 어떤 행사인지 말씀을 드리고 싶습니다. 주빈국의 특히 주빈국의 주요 창작자들의 예술적 경험을 나누고 그들이 만든 영화에 대한 생생한 증언, 무엇보다도 영화제를 찾는 관객 여러분들과 함께하는 특별한 순간이 지금 여러분들이 함께하고 계시는 비스프 토크입니다. 여러분들은 이 순간을 통해서 영화 만들기에 대한 창작자 감독의 생각을 보게 될 것입니다. BISFF Talk is a masterclass. It's a filmmaker give an overview of his her web and past work, as well as receive questions from the audience about their works. 그럼 오래 기다렸습니다. 정말 오래 기다리셨는데 감독 오늘의 주인공이신 감독분을 모셔보도록 하겠습니다. So let me introduce the director of BISFF Talk of this year. So let's meet this tremendous director. We are very lucky to have the director. 제40회 부산국제 단편영화제 BISFF 토크 감독님은 금년 주빈국인 미국이고요. 미국 다큐멘터리 영화계의 아주 중요한 감독님이시죠. J. 로젠블렛 감독이십니다. J. 로젠블렛 from this year's BISFF guest country will join us for BISFF Talk. J. 로젠블렛 감독님은요, 세계적인 아티스트이시고 아카데미 시상식 노미네이트에 빛나는 영화 감독이고요. 총 30편 이상의 영화를 연출하셨습니다. 인간의 감정과 심리의 핵심을 파고드는 이분의 작품은 사적이면서도 인간의 보편적인 내용을 담고 있는데요. 100여 차례 이상 수상한 그의 작품들은 정말 전 세계에서 좀 상영이 되었었고 특히 뉴욕 필름 포럼과 뉴욕 현대미술관에서 그의 작품을 상영하는 특별전이 개최되기도 했습니다. 현재는요. 샌프란시스코에 있는 주이시 필름 인스티튜트에서 프로그램 디렉터를 역임하고 계시고 있습니다. J. Rosenblatt is an internationally recognized artist and Academy Award-nominated filmmaker who has completed over 30 films. His work explores our emotional and the physiology cause that are personal in their content, yet universal in their appeal. J. Rosenblatt's films have received over 100 awards and have screened throughout the world. A selection of his films had a theatrical launch and the Film Forum in New York and the Museum of Modern Art in New York. He is currently the program director of the Jewish Film Institute. 자, 그러면은 오래 기다리신 비스프 토크를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 감독님께서 오늘 그 비스프 토크를 찾아주신 우리 저희 부산국제단편영화제의 관객 여러분들에게 인사를 말씀하고 본인의 영화에 대한 아주 짧은 소개를 갖는 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. And after I invite Mr. Rosenblatt to the short presentation, and also you will introduce yourself, and we could start the BISFF Talk. Please, Mr.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sang-Hoon, and welcome everyone. I'm glad to be here. I wish I was there in person, maybe another year. I think you gave a little bit of my bio. Did you want me to, what did you want me to talk about now? The first about my biography? Is that?
Yes, yeah. We could start with your biography and your short presentation of overlook of your films, please.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm curious, how did opening night go? Was it a success?
Yes. I could talk to you first as an artist director and also a human being. Every time I saw your film, even yesterday night, with a big screen with there are so many wind, and I feel some every time I experience something from your film. So it was an intense moment, and even I saw several times your films. Every time I feel a different thing.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and it's one of my goals when I'm making a film, that they could hold up to repeated screenings, not just once, but maybe you see it again, you see new things, and it grows. I'm going to talk a little bit about how I got started, a little biographical.
Yes, so I give you a first question. So this is the one of the questions I ask every time to the directors. What made you decide to becoming a filmmaker rather than other job or profession?
Yeah, well, I didn't plan on being a filmmaker. I was actually thinking that I would become a therapist, mental health therapist. I went to graduate school for counseling to get a master's degree. And while I was at that school, I took a Super 8 film class just for fun. And I absolutely fell in love with filmmaking. And I was putting more time into this elective Super 8 class than all my counseling classes put together. And that told me something. It told me that there's something here that I need to continue to explore. So I did get a master's degree in counseling, but then I decided to get another master's degree in filmmaking. So I applied to film schools, and I ended up going to film school in San Francisco, and I never left. So while I was making films in film school, I was working on a psychiatric unit in a hospital. And I did that for 5 years. I went to film school part-time. I made 2 films in film school. And then once I graduated, I got a job teaching filmmaking.
Okay.
In different schools, what we call adjunct professor, not not tenure, just in different schools, teaching one class here, one class there. And that's how I made a living for 20 years. So then I couldn't find enough teaching, and I got this programming job. So similar to what you do, that's what I do for a living. And as you can see from my films, they're not very commercial. And I can't make a living just making my films, so I have to have a day job. So even though filmmaking is my passion, as far as work goes, I spend a lot of time doing other things. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, very, very good. So every time I feel when I see your film some kind of emotion, and I ask myself, you understand very well the human psychology. Even you just said it's not a commercial film, but you could touch the last part of the human being. Of course, we share the same experience as a father also. And I feel, you did, you had some experience, and you could show this experience with the camera and your screening, writing, something like that. Very, very interesting things. So, okay, we could go to the second question. So it's related to the first question also. Where does the inspiration for such creating film comes from? Has there been any change from the past to the present, please?
You know, I make films that I think, one person said this to me a long time ago. I was at a festival in Switzerland called Locarno Film Festival. And I had a film there. It's called The Smell of Burning Ants, which you're a bit familiar with because you've seen When We Were Bullies. And in When We Were Bullies, I talk about the smell of burning ants. And when I described that film to this woman I met, she said, "Oh, I see. You are opening up wounds to let the poisons out." And I thought, that's true. So the psychological thing that I try to do in many of my films, not all of them, is to explore some psychological, emotional issue and not provide answers, but to touch people in a way that hopefully will start the healing process in themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, yeah, you are very, I understand very well. Yes, I experienced this kind of thing when I see your films. Yes.
Good. I'm glad. That makes me feel that I'm on the right track. I try to make my films both provocative and poetic. And many of them are very personal, but they're personal in a way that hopefully is also universal. So I think that when you're as personal as possible, you can actually affect and reach other people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what gives me great energy as an artist, to touch people. So I think that has to do with my background in psychology. I think it has to do with my childhood, my interests. And I try to only make films that I feel very passionate about, that are touching, that are something that either I went through or something that I find that draws me in. Because filmmaking is not easy. And if you don't have a passion for it, it's easy to drop a project or just not get, not do as good a job as you can do. But I try to find films and ideas that I actually have to make the film. Like I have no choice.
Okay, I understand. I like very much the word provocation, because I feel this kind of feeling when if we just see that how do you measure a year and when police, it's very funny, very emotional. But sometimes I feel okay, the director wants to provocate in our heart to 끌려가다 데리고 가다 lead the audience to the somewhere, so we could especially could you if you try to provocate the audience to the film when we see some image of your recent film, how is the moment we could say?
Well, I try to take the viewer on a journey in each of my films. And many times it's an emotional journey. I'm very aware of the audience. I don't just make films for myself. So I'm always thinking, how is this going to affect someone as they watch it? And in my films, I also try to leave space for the viewer to reflect on their own life. So there's moments where it just allows you to get in a little deeper than hopefully many of the films we see are very surface, you know. Yeah. I have no problem with films that are entertaining. I hope my films are also entertaining, but that's not enough for me. I want to go deeper than just entertainment.
Okay, and we could do a short question. Yeah, could you talk to me, please, describe a method of your own film creation? For example, how do you write a screenplay, how to shot and experience regions, to choose some genres and style, etc. Please.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think to be honest, every film is different. You know, for instance, the film Human Remains, right? You showed that film also, or you're going to show it. That came about almost by accident. I was looking through archival footage. I was working on a different project, and I came across this image of Hitler eating. He put a piece of bread in his mouth and was chewing. And I found that very disturbing. There he is. And I thought, why is that so disturbing? And I realized it's because I didn't think of him as human. I thought of him only as a monster. And I thought that would be an interesting idea, to show these horrible people, these dictators, who've responsible for many, many, many deaths, destruction, just horrible. But they're also human. And if we see them as human, then we have to look at ourselves too. Because if we just see them as a monster, we put them on this pedestal, and then we take no responsibility for what happens in the world and around us, okay? So that's how that film came about. And then I did research. I've got all these, this was pre-internet, okay? So I got like 20 biographies of Hitler, Mao, Stalin, Franco, and Mussolini. And I just looked for personal details about them. And in that film, they do not talk about any of the atrocity, any of the problems that they were part of causing, that they led. They only talk about these mundane details. And my strategy with that film was that if they are not talking about what we know they've done and what they were responsible for, then the viewer is going to feel tension, a lot of tension. And the viewer is going to think about those things. So you're not being told it. I call this a film of omission. It's more about what's not said than what is said. Mm-hmm. So that's one example of a film, how I went around. And then I looked for, archival footage and then manipulated it by reframing it. So I didn't want to show them in uniforms. I only want to show their faces, or to take away all the government and leadership things that we think of with them, and make it so that they could be your next door neighbor. So a film like, I have this film, Phantom Limb, that was based on a childhood trauma. It was a film that I had in my psyche for a long time. My brother died when I was a kid, and I always wanted to make some sort of film related to that. And so that was the starting point for that film. And then I just collect, in many ways, I don't have a linear way of working, okay? I will sometimes write a script, a voiceover script, but that will change as I'm working on the film. And I tend to collect images and shoot things. Sometimes a lot of my films are, I would call, collage films. I take different pieces and put them together with different kinds of sound, voiceover, music, sound effects, silence, all these things to create one piece. Sometimes an early film of mine, it was called Short of Breath. This film, I was working in the psychiatric hospital that I mentioned, right? And as I'm going into the parking lot, there's a dumpster, you know, this big garbage thing. And I saw film cans. Somebody had thrown out 16 millimeter film cans. And I just took them and put them in my car. And eventually I looked at them, and they were training films for doctors in bedside manner. How do you talk to patients? And they were really funny, but they were also, I realized I could use that as a structure for a film. And that became Short of Breath. For my film Kodachrome Elegies, I used my parents' home movies as a point of departure. Sometimes since I work with a lot of found footage and archival footage, like the Hitler film, sometimes I'll see an image and that will trigger an idea.
Yes.
And then I expand on that. So there's different ways of going about it. And then sometimes I just have an interest. Like I made a film about suicide because I was very interested in the question of why people do that, you know, to be or not to be. And so I explored suicide and then looked for stories about suicide. And I actually co-wrote that with somebody I know whose brother committed suicide, but his brother kept a journal. So I used his journal in the film.
Yeah, we could do something more about your film, because I know your younger brother will pass by when he was very young, because you talk about this in the film. So
I talk about that when we
yeah,
were
it's very bad news.
which I did, by the way, I didn't plan on talking about that.
Oh, no, okay.
That was not my plan, but it came up in my interviews with my classmates. They said,
Yeah.
What do you remember of me? And all the girls, not the boys, the girls said, well, I remember one thing that happened when you were in 4th grade. And I was shocked because I didn't talk about it. I hid it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We feel with you, with something not determined. It's some kind of not intention, but so we traveled with you. Beside of you, we arrived to hear about your friends, the reaction, who talk about the 50 years ago thing. Suddenly we discovered one thing, two things, something. So it was very interesting. And I asked myself, why I'm with a director who go to somewhere 50 years ago, nobody opened the door. And I like very much, especially you talk about some topic could be a very serious, but in a manner not familiar. And that's the thing I like very much, because some other films who talk about this thing is very serious, very dark, and we see you use some collage the papers, and we could imagine what happened a long time ago in New York, Brooklyn, even I'm here in Korea 2023. That's the very good thing. And about the film Human Remains, I have a question. And even after the screening, I talked with some Korean documentary filmmakers who are very interested in your film. And we talk about, so we see the image of the dictators, okay, horrible dictators. And we hear there's some German words, some Chinese, some Italian, and we ask myself, is the real voice of them or not? And you put again the English translation, so we are between the image, the German and the English, and we ask myself, what is your intention? How is the method of filming this? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I understand what you're saying, and that's all intentional. I wanted to make it seem like almost like it was a BBC documentary. So I wanted to give the impression that these were their voices. That's why I have their language, underneath. And then we hear a British voiceover translating it. And that's how they do a lot of documentaries. So it's kind of like a mockumentary. You know that term, mockumentary?
Yeah.
But the facts in the film are true. I mean, I did research on the film, but it's a very constructed film. Like, they would never say these things about themselves. That's not their real voices. That's not their real words. They didn't say these things. Some of the things are quotes. I would say about 40% I found quotes that they said that. The other things were facts in biographies about them that I then put into first person and had them say. So they would never say some of these things about themselves. But I wanted to give the appearance that it was real. And I wanted exactly what you did, which was you were questioning, or the other people, is this real? Or, I wanted that kind of internal dialogue for the viewer, because I thought that would keep people very engaged, like just constantly asking the question, is that real? Is that true? So I think from what you said, I was successful in doing that, because that's what I wanted. Mm-hmm. Exactly that.
Yeah, before your film, we hate them, and after the film, we hate more. that's the impact that we had after the film. Everybody will talk about, they're horrible more than before the film. So it's maybe also some could be an answer, could be a bit quicker or long also. Do you think there are difference between making a feature film and a short film? Because we do a short film festival, we talk about short film, but what is your opinion about that, please?
Well, I only make short films. I have not made a feature film. Some of my films started as a feature idea, but they ended up as a short film. I thought I would say 3 or 4 of my films I thought would be much longer, like an hour and a half, but they ended up being like 30 minutes or 36 minutes. But so I have not personally made a feature film, but I have watched so many feature films. So I think I understand them. And I think they are different structurally. I think a feature film usually, not always, works best with some sort of dramatic 3-act structure.
Aristoteles. Yes.
I don't think a short film needs that. A short film can work with that too, but a short film can work with more experimentation of structure, because you have to hold the audience's attention for less time. In a feature film, if you do an experimental feature film, it's difficult to keep the audience interested without a dramatic structure. But in a short film, in a 10-minute film, you don't have to worry about that as much. So I think that's one big difference, is how you keep the audience's attention and keep them interested and not get bored with the film. I would say that was the main difference. That said, many of my short films do have a dramatic structure. They have, you know, a curve, dramatic curve. Yeah.
Okay. The other question. As an actor, because we see you in two of our films we show in this festival. You are a director, and so we could say you are actor also. Is opinion your proper films have any impact on your film creation?
Well, you know, I don't really see myself as an actor. I mean, I would say I'm a subject in my films, some of them. And because I'm not really acting, I'm just being myself. Almost more like a Cassavetes film, you know. I want to present myself in a way that supports the film and the story. And to be honest, I resisted this for a very long time, and I was more hidden in my films. And like I said, in When We Were Bullies, this still you have there now, I didn't like the sound of my own voice, and that forced me to work around that. So as my films got more and more personal, I realized that I couldn't avoid that anymore. So I've used my own voice when it was appropriate, and I've even appeared in some of my films as a subject. So in this film, great still, great example, because this is not just me, but it's me being very, in a very vulnerable situation and showing my kind of, just in a way, this is I didn't plan this being the beginning of the film, but when I was the editing of this film took years, and putting this at the beginning of the film was one of the best decisions I think I made, because of the vulnerability.
Yes.
Because really, it's telling you in a way you don't realize it, but it's telling you a lot, the viewer, in that one image, that there's a metaphor there, that we're going into this locked area. We're going back in time. We're climbing over. We're older now, and we're doing something that the kids would do. So there's a lot of things in just one image, you know. And you're opening, in any film, you're opening so important, you know, to pull people in.
Yes, you're right. And we could say about something maybe a little more serious, yeah, because we live in South Korea. Korea is divided, so we know what is the war since 70 years. Exactly.
Yes.
Armistice is not the end of the world, by the way. So as a director of a documentary, I think you are very well know very well about the history, etc. We seen in human remains also. So what is the meaning of film and art in a situation like now, where wars are taking place? Yes.
Yeah, well, you know, regardless of all the horrible things that are happening, I think, and there's many right now, the world is not in good shape, but there's always a need for art, always. And I think it's a big part of the human experience. And when it works, it speaks to our shared humanity. So I don't think I don't think it can stop a war or virus or things that you're mentioning, but I think artists have always been at the forefront of ideas, of movements, and for instance, this year I'm on your jury, the international jury, and you start seeing trends and things that as a curator, you know this.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I noticed that there were a lot of short films that are dealing with AI,
Absolutely.
artificial intelligence, and
Yes, yes.
these are artists like that are ahead of the curve. Now we're reading about it in the newspapers, but these films were made, some of them in being made years, in the process. Maybe they had the idea a couple of years ago. So I think art is usually ahead of
Mhm.
people. And so I think there's always a place for art, and I don't think it means you're not serious or you don't think other issues are important, and they are, of course. I mean, there's so many problems, but that doesn't mean we can't learn from watching films, from seeing paintings, from listening to music. I think that's where we connect. Can't lose sight of our connection.
Okay, so is relate also, is there some meaning about places of your environment, country, and region in your films?
Well, I would say that a lot of my films are not overtly political, but they are, if you look carefully.
Okay.
In some in terms of current issues, I have produced two projects. One is called, they're both omnibus films, where I put out, myself and a filmmaker friend put out a call for entries for people to submit short films, and we curated programs. And we did this after September 11th in the World Trade Center and all that. We put together a program called Underground Zero. And this was a collection of 2 programs of short films that were dealing with the issues that came up, not the mass media issues, but real issues that the media wasn't covering. And then when Trump was elected, another friend of mine and myself saw that as almost like another 9/11, a different kind of 9/11. So we created this program. We put out a call for films, and we got a lot of films in, and we curated a program called Filmmakers Unite, and then in parentheses, FU. And some of your viewers will understand what that means, but it's the initials of Filmmakers Unite, but it's also means something else. FU.
Yes. Yeah. We could talk about something more serious. So, very well, Korea became suddenly, no, that is not a term, but become a country of film, cinema, and content, music, etc. Have you ever seen any Korean movies? If yes, which ones? And how do you find them? Is there some specificities?
Yes, of course. I've seen Korean films. I think the Korean films I've seen have been great. I've seen, of course, I've seen Parasite, but it's Bong Joon-ho, right?
Bong Joon-ho, yeah.
Yeah, but I also saw Snowpiercer and Mother, which I particularly liked a lot.
Just like me. Mother.
Love that film. Very disturbing. Park Chan-wook's films. Stoker, I really like that film. He's very influenced by Hitchcock, I think, his films.
Yes.
Like Decision to Leave feels like a Vertigo type film. Old Boy is, of course, a wonderful kind of cult classic, I guess. What I haven't seen a ton of Korean cinema, but what I've seen is very strong, and I hope to see more of it. As far as specificities, there seems to be a willingness to go to dark places in the psyche, and explore society's underbelly. So Parasite is a great example of that, And like I said, I think some things that I've seen seem very Hitchcockian, and also even the horror genre, playing with the horror genre too. But you know, I can't talk too much about it because I've only
Yeah,
seen like maybe
yeah.
10 Korean films. I like the film Minari,
Oh,
very
yes.
sweet. That's a different kind of film, but I
Yeah,
thought
yes.
really good.
They're very good. Yeah, thank you. I'm not. I'm not representing the Korean people, but it's very good to see a good director, to good films admired by the foreign filmmakers. Because you just mentioned Korean directors who saw Hitchcock, Hollywood film, French film, but film all over the world, and we do our own. Our history, our society struggle, etc., etc., and some kind of exchange between the filmmakers and the audience. Okay, good.
Yeah, I want to say
So
one more thing. I
yes,
had one of my former students at the San Francisco Art Institute is a filmmaker, Korean filmmaker. And he made this wonderful film that was at Sundance. It's called The Dining Table. Did you ever see that?
dining table.
It's Teddy Rowe.
Terry
R-O.
Rowe. Terry Rowe. I have to do
Yeah.
some research. Yeah.
Yeah, that was,
Thank you for the information. Thank you.
I was so impressed by that film.
Mhm.
And he's living in Korea now. He's back. in Korea.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Thank you for the
Yeah.
information. You just mentioned about the summer project also. Or what are you doing nowadays? Tell us your actual work and about your project.
Well, you know, I have to say, I've been really blessed the past few decades. I've always had a project I'm working on or excited about. But unfortunately, right now, I'm not working on a film right now. I wish I were, but I just don't have a strong enough idea to want to spend a year, 2 years, 4 years of my life. So I'm kind of just waiting and seeing what happens with the universe, if some idea comes to me or some project comes to me. And also, like we talked about earlier, when you have a full-time job, a day job, it doesn't give you a lot of time and space for filmmaking. So even like a film like When We Were Bullies, it took me 4 years to make that film. And I had to work at night, on weekends. I had to take vacation time. It wasn't like a lot of filmmakers just have, you know, their whole week they can work on their films. I didn't have that luxury, let's say.
Yeah. It's maybe it could be a personal question about what you said. Me also, I as a professor, and I studied film. Always, I want to do a project, but I never achieve. Always, okay, I'll do that tomorrow. But you realize that this work. What is your motivation every morning? Okay, I do that. Even I have my job, but I'll do something. Maybe I will finish 2 years, 3 years later. What is your real motivation of every single day?
Well, I mean, again, if I have an idea that I'm passionate about, the energy and motivation just comes. It's natural.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't had a problem with that.
Okay.
And I would say, if I didn't have to work at my job, my day job, I would have a lot more time. But I'm not sure I would have made better films, because I think because I had these limitations and less time, I took a long time to make the films. So I was able to work out problems that might have not been worked out if they happened in a short amount of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I think sometimes with creativity, when you have limits, you can be more creative. When you can do anything, it's very hard to get started.
Okay, thank you. We maybe we receive some question from our viewer about internet, YouTube. Could 질문, yes, please. Okay. Okay. Then so 네, 잠깐만요. Okay. Oh yeah. Yes. When I see your film, how do you measure a film? First image, first party is some kind of very homemade movie, and the end of the film suddenly the screen is spreading, and we feel some thing. Wow, we see, we discover already, but we discover again the relation you and your daughter, and yeah, this moment, yeah, I saw some Mr. More than 15 years. A little crying because we are in Korea, we hiding to cry. So what is your motivation to do a different frame size? Please?
Yeah. So I'm glad whoever asked that question, I'm glad you noticed that, because it's a little bit subtle, you know. And that idea came while I was editing the film. And I didn't plan that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The last year when Ella turned 18, I used a different camera. It was the only year.
Mm.
Before that, I wanted it to always look the same. I thought it was important to keep the background the same, the frame the same. The last year, because I had this newer camera, maybe when she turned 15, but I didn't want to change the format. It just felt like the wrong thing to do. But when it was the last year, I felt like I could use a better camera, which had a different frame ratio, okay? So while I was editing, I thought, how should I show this? And then I realized that I'm going to start it the same. But then when she's talking to the camera without me, I'm going to kind of give her the frame, more of the frame, give her more power in a way. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but power is
yes, I asked her about power. But for me, opening up the frame was like she could breathe more. And then plus, as you say, at the very end, I come into the frame.
Okay.
And when I come into the frame, we need a larger frame.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there some another question? The question is how do your daughter reaction after watching the movie? Is she happy?
I would say when I showed it to her when I had a rough cut because she was living at home because of COVID. She came back home from college. And that's when I started working on the film because all of a sudden I had more time. And I thought I should look at all that footage. And because I didn't even know if I had a film. I never looked at the footage. And then I realized, yeah, there is a film here. I started editing it and I asked her to watch it and tell me, is it okay? First of all, I wanted her to give me her consent again. Even though she loved doing this with me, I wanted to make sure it was okay with her. And she was a little bit embarrassed at a couple of moments, but for the most part, she really was happy about it. And she's been very supportive of it. So, I have to say, she grew up with me filming her a lot. I made 4 films with her before she turned age 5. And 2 of those films were pretty successful. They were on HBO. And so she was used to this from way back. So it wasn't like a big surprise to her to see herself on the screen. But I think like everyone else that sees this film, what is surprising is just to see someone grow up in 29 minutes. It's just kind of amazing to watch time. You're watching time.
Absolutely, absolutely. We feel like we are there. She's her friend, her parents to see in a short film. The whole life is some kind of emotion, and that's why we are happy at the same time we are sad. I don't know. It's this kind of mixture of sentiment. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she's grown up. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Like you like, I think parents can really appreciate it because it goes in the moment, it's slow. But when you look back, it's so fast.
Yes.
And this film brings out how fast it goes by. And then, you know, from this little 2-year-old who says, I'm big now, to this, you know, young woman now. And there's something both beautiful and but is sad too. And, you know, she's moving on with her life, you know.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, but by the way, she is singing very, very good. I really appreciate it. And she sing when she was very young, and then more and more we wait the improvement of her singing, and we wait just like yeah, it's a father, it's some uncle, yeah. So yeah, this time we really have you and your daughter in Busan, but we will seek another occasion. And just you said when I see your film first sight, I want to show this film to the Korean parents. Yeah, that's the one of the reason why I chose your film and the opening ceremony, even for the outside the cinema, because I want to look at this film, and you have to experience something you are living now, but in a film, in art. That's my goal. I try to show your film more in Korea for the next years. Yes. Okay. Very, very good. The other question. Yes, about this film, because this film is we've seen 3 times, and so when did you decide to start this project? Upon her birth?
No, I started. I made this the first film I made with her is called "I Used to Be a Filmmaker," and it was from her birth till she was 14 months, and it's a really delightful film. And you know, we talked about earlier how ideas come, and that came from the title. I had my daughter. She was a young, like toddler, what we call infant toddler. And somebody said to me, "What do you do?" And I said to them, just jokingly, "Well, I used to be a filmmaker because I'm now a parent, you know." And that gave me the idea for the film. And the film is all these different cinematic terms, but it's all parenting. So we see this fade out, which is, you see her crying and falling asleep in my arms. So it's all playing with cinema and parenting. So when I finished that film, it was very enjoyable to make it because I was able to combine my time with her with filmmaking, which is what one of the, I was worried to become a parent because I said, how am I going to have time to make films? And I figured it out. I just make films about her, you know, that would help. So anyway, after that film, it was such a good experience that I just decided that every year on her birthday, at least, I will film her. And I didn't know if it would be a film, like I said earlier, but I knew at the very least, she would have a personal archive for herself. So it didn't matter. If it didn't turn into a film, she'd have 1 tape a year that she could see herself at that age. So the answer is I started at age 2, but I didn't know until she was 20 whether I had a film because I didn't.
Yeah, in my opinion, these films give some desire to the all directors to this kind of film, and at the same time, give a desire to everyone to become a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So a little short film who give a lot of things, in my opinion. So
I will say one thing though.
I
agree with you. I think some people are going to see this film and say, I'm going to do that, and I think that's great. But it is deceptively simple, but it's more complicated than it seems.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know, but I tried, I quit, so I could do this. So yes, okay, but I think we talk a lot and we have another thing. So we just finish. If you have one last word you could do.
No, the only thing I will say is I really wish I was there in person. I know that was the original plan. And I hope sometime in the future I can be there in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. 네, 네, 감독님과 함께한 지구 반대편에 계셔가지고 처음에 살짝 커넥트하기 어렵습니다. 지구가 엄청 크잖아요. 한 1,000만 킬로 정도 됐기 때문에 어려움이 있었는데 저희 뭐 스태프들 아주 열심히 해가지고 잘 뭐 이렇게 행사가 진행이 됐습니다. 감독님과의 그 이야기 순간 정말 흥미롭고 지적이고 감정적이고 하는 순간들이었습니다. 감독님의 연출과 제작에 관한 숨겨진 여러 다양한 면들을 직접 듣는 귀한 시간이었습니다. 사실 영화를 만든 작가가 영화를 통해 말하고자 하는 것은 이미 작품 안에 담겨져 있다고 생각을 합니다. 단편 영화가 가진 특징인 도전 정신이라든가 독창성, 실험성에 대한 창작을 하는 우리 다른 어떤 사람들하고도 교류의 장이 될 수 있었다고 생각하고요. 그런 것들이 토크를 통해서 조금이나마 전달이 되었으면 합니다. 무언가를 정확히 알기 위해서는 직접 하는 것도 중요하지만 그것은 또 다른 사람에게 알리는 행위를 통해서 고쳐야 된다고 생각을 하고요. 이렇게 끝까지 함께해 주신 여러분 감사드리면서 토크를 마치도록 하겠습니다. 영어를 통해서 마무리를 하도록 하겠습니다. Thank you again for your participation on behalf of the Busan International Film Festival. I want to thank the director Jane Rosenblatt and all of you joining us virtually. Hopefully we can all be together in person future. So huge thank you for you, and yes, goodbye and see you again.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yes. Bye bye. Yes. Thank you. 네, 이것으로 비스프 토크를 마치도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Okay. I'm going to do the jury next.